But kind of moving on though to what we was unexpected in week 3, and I think really kind of start off with this. We'll continue with our division discussion, but looking at the AFC West as a whole, and because there was a marquee matchup today or yesterday that everyone was talking about, and it was the Chargers at the Chiefs, and everyone knew that like, this was the game, and this is going to be a big game within the division. Both these teams could be very solid. However, they were fighting for third place in the division, which was mind-boggling to me because it's gone under the radar, though, of the Raiders and the Broncos are both undefeated. And so the Chiefs are now in fourth place, 2 games behind. Again, it's not as big a deal. Actually, it's an even bigger deal than in baseball. But because now you're 2 games back. If they lose to the Raiders one time or both times, now they're going to be 4 games back. It's a huge loss and a big swing in I would say the power rankings, especially within that division.
Yeah, and so for me, the big thing with the Raiders specifically, they start out 3-0, but they beat the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Dolphins. And for me, those are all 3 wild card contending teams. And so it won't matter if they end up winning the division. But in terms of the wild card race, if Kansas City gets their act together, those are huge wins. But again, they're all against playoff caliber teams. I think Pittsburgh might actually be the least playoff caliber team out of the 3. But still, they're going to compete for a wild card. They're going to have 7 to 10 wins probably come the end of the year.
Yeah.
And so that to me is very impressive by the Raiders. Still not as shocking as Kansas City being 4th place in the division. And I mean,
well, and so they had a crazy loss to the Ravens. Then this was a great game, I think, against the Chargers. But one of their big bugaboo, though, and this is actually a stat, they are tied for last with the Detroit Lions for points allowed per game. And it's not really like the Browns' offense is highly above average. I would say it's really good. The Ravens' offense, I think, is not as good, but they allowed them to put up 36 points, and then it's not.
It's not built. The Ravens aren't built to win a shootout. The Ravens are built to win 24-17 or 24-21. Like they're built to win grinders, not put up 36 points. Yeah. And so that to me is what is concerning about giving up 36. We did talk about their defense being a concern coming into the year, and
it has been.
I'm not going to say I told you so to Chiefs fans, but I said it. So.
Well, and they honestly they should have lost to the Browns too. The Browns kind of blew that game in week 1. Like the Chiefs could easily be 0-3 right now.
The Browns lost Jedrick Wills, and that was kind of the turning point because then they settled for a field goal in the red zone during that possession, and then they didn't really. I think they scored 6 more points after that or something.
Well, they turned it over, and they turned it over several times. Yeah. So, the Chiefs are very interesting. The Chargers. It was good to see the Chargers have a better offensive performance with Justin Herbert really coming alive. Him and Mike Williams. We talked about the Chargers offense in the offseason. They definitely seem to have taken a nice step forward. Into their 2021 season, figured some things out, but. It still just comes back to see like that Raiders team is tough, is really tough. Yeah, they almost blew it against Miami, but that's not going to be an easy game either. I think that they're playing on Monday night in this upcoming.
They actually play the Chargers on Monday night.
Matchups, correct?
Yeah, they play the Chargers Monday night.
So I mean that's going to be
on the Dallas game.
That's going to be a very interesting. Yep, it's going to be very interesting
for the division lead
to watch.
Well, unless Denver wins.
Yeah, division lead.
Speaking of which, Denver is a team that we have not talked about yet.
But Denver,
but Denver has the number 1 or number 2 scoring defense, right? They won it
number 2.
With Carolina, number 2. In points allowed. Granted, again, we kind of said it earlier, but both of these teams have the luxury of having played the Jets, so it's a little bit of a.
And the Broncos did play the Giants as well. Who do they play in week 2? Who did the Broncos play in week 2?
I'll look really fast. The Jaguars. Okay, so they played 3 terrible teams.
Arguably the 3 worst teams in the league.
Yeah, arguably 3 of the worst teams in the league. But still, starting out 3-0 is always a good thing. That defense is extremely legit. They have a fantastic pass rush along with some very good cornerbacks to match up with it. And this one is definitely more unexpected. I thought that they wouldn't have.
I would have thought they would have had a tougher time.
Yeah, a tougher time. Mm-hmm. But it was definitely a surprise to see them at 3-0. But again, they've done it with ease. And so I'm really curious to see if that level of defensive play will continue to go up as the talent goes up or as the competition level goes up. But again, this division is almost completely backwards as to what we predicted in the in the
I honestly would have thought
previews.
I honestly would have thought that both the Chargers and the Chiefs both would have been 2-0 going into this game, and the Raiders and Broncos maybe could have been 2-1 as well, but there would have been a loss in there somewhere. So it's going to be fun to watch. I'm really looking forward to that Monday night game. Because I think the Raiders is like, and you had a good point. The Ravens, Steelers, and Dolphins, they are not the elite teams that we all consider, but they're not a joke either. And that's one thing I would say where I would rank the Raiders higher than the Broncos. They have had some tough games. They had to play some legit teams, and they took care of business. And I think that's only going to help build their confidence moving forward. Moving on now to another thing that we were not expecting in week 3, but really also not expecting up to this point in the season, only because Washington's defense was so dominant. But Washington is ranked as one of the worst defenses in the league. I think they're second next to Seattle on most yards allowed per game, and they are fourth worst in points allowed per game, which is just very shocking to see because with how dominant their front seven is, we would have thought that they would have at least been able to get after the quarterback and stop some of these teams, stop some of these runs. And I actually don't really think that that's the issue. It's just that their secondary, they've allowed like 400 yards, it seems like, every single game. Justin Herbert had threw for 400 plus yards. Daniel Jones was really close to that, and Josh Allen threw all over the team, which is supposed to be one of the best teams in one of the best defensive teams in the league. But I don't know. We talked about this a little bit on our recap from when they played the Giants, but it just seems like the secondary is just letting these guys stay open. They're giving them so much room for cushion. I don't really know. Is that what you see as well? Am I crazy here? Or
their secondary was kind of an issue last season. It's just that pass rush was so good that it didn't really matter. They were kind of able to get away with it. But I mean, their secondary is not good. I think that I don't want to say they regret it because Jamin Davis looks like a good prospect, but they passed up on a few guys like Asante Samuel Jr. is having a really good season for the Chargers. Caleb Farley for the Titans is a very good overall physical prospect. They passed up on a few guys that I think could be having a bigger impact now. And so, it's definitely surprising because they were a top 5 defense last year. Yeah. And it's definitely surprising to see them here. I kind of had them winning the division, but right now, they're 1-2 because they beat the Giants.
So, so they're going to be tied for second behind whoever wins this Monday night game. But I still think that they could beat the Eagles, but with how awful their pass defense is, and they're ranked also as well. And when it comes to pass defense specifically, they're ranked third in most yards allowed. I think behind Tampa Bay and behind Baltimore. And you would think like that wouldn't even be expected. And it's not really the Chargers week 1, they had some issues, but they still allowed a lot of yards. Buffalo, I expected Buffalo to win this game. I didn't expect them to
Yeah.
throw the ball all over the field. But as we talked about, their performance against New York really made me kind of question. Like, this seems like there is some issues here, and there's a disconnect between the secondary and the front seven, because maybe they're just not used to. They're just used to Chase Young sacking these guys almost immediately, and same thing with Montez Sweat. But
Yeah.
there's just a huge disconnect. And when they play against a team like the Cowboys, who look like they're firing on all cylinders now offensively, they're not going to be able to put up enough points against
Mm-mm.
Dallas to keep up with them.
They're not talented enough on offense.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of respect for Taylor Heineke, but he's not a guy that's going to lead a top 10 scoring offense in the league.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is tough to see. I do think they will turn it around. Ron Rivera is a very good coach. He will adjust and adapt, I think, to the players that he has and their skill sets. I would like to see them play much more press man and try and make the quarterback get the ball out quick, because I just think that press man would play a lot better than kind of like, I don't want to say that, because like you said, they're given a lot of cushion and a lot of like space to these receivers.
Yeah.
I think they need to get up and just make the offense beat them. And I think they're playing too passively in the secondary right now.
Yeah.
And maybe they just don't have the talent for that. But that's just my unprofessional opinion.
But I think you're right, especially with how talented that front four is. And then let's say you blitz a linebacker every time. So now you got to have all five linemen. Then you have to have a running back stay and help. That quarterback's going to have to get rid of the ball quickly. And it's like, I mean, maybe depending on the team, he might be fighting with fire a little bit on potentially giving up a big play. But a majority of the time, I feel like with how good that defensive line is, they're going to win that battle.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to win that battle majority of the time and get to the quarterback and stop the drive.
That not the defense. That defensive front last year is the reason that they went to the playoffs.
Yes.
Not offense, not the secondary. Those 7 guys up front is the reason they went to the playoffs, and they just haven't been able to get home yet. And I think they will improve. I mean, having a pass rush, having talented pass rushers is a huge plus. And I think again, Ron Rivera will adjust and adapt to what his players do and what the scheme needs to be. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but lastly, kind of moving on, it's unfortunately what you didn't want to see happen this week, but we still have to talk about it because it was kind of unexpected. Because we both thought, I thought this was a shoe-in game for New England to win and to beat New Orleans, but they did not. They lost 28-13. Really, this wasn't unexpected because New England was coming in. And they were playing solid. They're going to be a more defensive-heavy team, try and slow the game down as well. Mm-hmm. And the Saints' offense is questionable at best. But looking at the score, that did not seem to happen. Mac Jones seems like he had a pretty decent game. He did throw a couple interceptions, but he did go, I think, 30 for 51 for 360 yards.
30 for 50. I think he threw like 31 for 59, a touchdown and 3 interceptions. Which, so the interception stat is a little inflated. Only one of them I think was really his fault, and that one came late in the game on a 4th and 10, and it was just a bad throw. But the first one, he got hit, and the ball kind of fluttered out of his hands. But the protection on that play was absolutely terrible. He went to go step up in the pocket and just got clobbered. And then the second interception, which was a pick 6, was absolutely a pitiful attempt by Jonnu Smith. Like, I could have done better by not doing anything at that point. Like, it makes no sense to me that these guys get paid millions of dollars and yet they make some of the dumbest mistakes I've ever seen. Anyways, the Patriots defense also kind of let me down. They played pretty well in the second and third quarter. They gave up an opening drive touchdown where they just got absolutely demolished off the line of scrimmage. And then it looked like the teams swapped jerseys and then continued to play for the next 2 quarters. but and then the Patriots gave up a short field. The Patriots just don't look like themselves. They wanted to come into the season and they wanted to run the ball and have a strong offensive line presence. The offensive line is not good. The investments that they made on the defensive line have not really paid off. Matt Judon is the only guy that I think actually flashed on Sunday. Godshaw had 2 or 3 good reps, but other than that, when they really needed him, he got pushed off the line of scrimmage like he was a toddler. So it just, the Patriots are not the team that I think we expected them to be. I do not expect them to make the playoffs at this point. At this point, I just want Mac Jones to play a full season, get a full season under his belt, and then kind of learn, just learn some NFL schemes and do things like that. But I did not expect this game to be as bad as it was, because it's just frustrating. So,
well, especially against the Saints too, who I guess like you don't really know what you're getting from them, because obviously we all know what happened with Green Bay. But then the next week, they who do they play in week 2 again? But
Panthers.
Oh, it was the Panthers, yeah, and they did absolutely miserable on offense. I think they only had like six first downs or something like that the entire game. It felt like, and so then when New England, who is also a really good defensive team, you think that they would have given them a lot of issues as well. So, so my takeaway from that though is, so you're already taking you're already scratching New England from the playoffs.
Oh yeah, no, this team isn't that good. I can already tell. No, I don't think that they make the playoffs, because they're going to be 1-3 after Sunday. And then they still have to play Buffalo twice, so that's 6 losses. You can't. This team they can't win in the trenches. They invested so much money on that defensive line, and they can't win in the trenches. Every single game that they win is going to have to be a grinder. There is no more of the Tom Brady of the 45-28 wins. Like, there's no more of that. It doesn't exist anymore. Like,
interesting. Okay.
It just is what it is. I don't think this team is actually very good.
Oh, okay.
And that hurts me to say as a Patriots fan. I just don't. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm curious about. I mean, that's the Sunday night game. I'm sure that everyone probably knows about by now. But it's going to be Tom Brady's returning to Foxborough. It's only going to be a little exciting, but I mean, yeah, and that's a good point too. I think the biggest thing for them is who is your guys' top receiver threat? Because if you guys had a top receiver threat, I think he could have a night against
who was it, or who is it supposed? Like, are you asking who is it supposed to be, or who is our was our top receiver? So we paid Nelson Aguilar. Okay, so Jacoby Myers is kind of like our slot guy. Nelson Aguilar, we paid a ton of money, and he hasn't done anything really so far in the first 3 games. And then we also signed Kendrick Bourne to kind of be our wide receiver. N'Keal Harry can't stay off the injury list. We paid Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry a ton of money, and Jonnu Smith had 1 catch and then caused another, just happened to be for the other team. So, and like, I'm looking at the Patriots schedule now just to kind of back up my point. So we're going to be 1-3 after next week, and then we go to the Texans. We should beat the Texans. There's no more penciling in wins anymore. Then we play the Cowboys at home. That's a coin flip game. And then we play the Jets right now, or in week 7, right? And then after that, here's our schedule: at Chargers, at Panthers, versus Browns. Those are 3 losses. Unless the Patriots miraculously turn around, those are 3 losses.
Yeah.
And then at Falcons, that's a coin flip game. I'll lean slightly in the Patriots' favor just after seeing the Falcons the first 3 weeks. No offense.
I know. Hey, we're on a winning streak.
Yeah, 1. I don't know if it's a streak, if it's 1.
I went streaking. I was so happy.
And then we play the Bills twice in the last 5 weeks. And we have to go to Indianapolis in there, who actually might be contending for a wild card spot at that point. So, I think at best this Patriots team ends up 9-7 or 9-8. I think that's the best case scenario.
Well, let's see. I'd be like, you guys could beat the Dolphins. You guys will beat against the Jets again. That's 4 wins. Sorry, 3 wins. I think you guys can sneak out a win against the Panthers. That's going to be a grinded out game that you were looking for. All right, so you guys can. You guys can. I'm not saying you will. I'd probably bet on the Panthers, but
the Panthers will make Mac Jones miserable. Okay, so it's week 3 right now. What is that? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, week 9, right? I'm going to say this in week 3. The Panthers will have 7 sacks on Mac Jones in that game. That pass protection is that bad.
Interesting.
They will have seven sacks.
Okay. I'm looking forward to watching the game. We're going to be in Hilton Head on a family vacation on that Sunday night game. I'm looking forward to watching it and actually kind of having a deep, experiencing this. I've seen the highlights of the Patriots. If I'm being honest, I don't really watch the Patriots, especially for this.
Yeah.
Because I know you're watching it. So, you'll be able to talk about it all. So I'm actually very curious to see because it was well documented on all the money that the Patriots spent. I think they spent the most amount of money in the offseason.
$153 million in guaranteed money this offseason.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see, because also if there is one thing that's really good with the Buccaneers, it is their front seven. They don't have an issue stopping the run on defense. They have an issue stopping the pass. I think they have a weak secondary. But they don't have an issue in the trenches.
Getting pressure.
Yeah, they don't have an issue about that at all. So
and that's where the Patriots are really struggling right now is in the trenches. So it is what it is, and I really hope the Patriots turn it around. I just don't have a ton of faith.
Yeah.
So just from what I've seen and what the Patriots' game plan is going into these games, they haven't been able to execute it against, in my opinion, teams that aren't that great. I don't think the Saints are very good, and I don't think the Dolphins are bottom tier wild card.
Yeah.
So
welcome to the club of not having faith in your football team. You haven't really experienced that in your entire life, so.
I don't expect
I'm looking
sympathy.
at you, Vikings fans, Browns fans, Lions fans, Falcons fans.
I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just saying the Patriots are not that good.
Oh yeah, no, it is just what the frustration you're experiencing now. I've felt that my entire life. So
yeah.
But yeah, man, it's gonna be interesting. I think there's still no reason to lose hope. I don't think you're gonna win the division. I think Buffalo. I think that fluke loss to Pittsburgh in the first week. I think there we saw a lot of that. People were just still getting the feelers out. But I think they're about to take off. Still some opportunities, I think, with a wild card. That'd be fun to kind of do after week 4, and we'll be a quarter of the way through the year to kind of look at where people are at. Because you mentioned Indianapolis. Indianapolis is 0-3 now. I mean, I'd be surprised. They've got to do a lot of work to come back and try and make a wild card, even with their being a team.
But they had a really tough start to the schedule.
They did. Yeah, they did.
So, granted, I don't know. Based off the look of it, it doesn't get too much easier